Madison Carter walks into Judge Frank Caprio's courtroom like she's stepping onto a red carpet at the Met Gala. Her $3,000 Prada handbag swings from her shoulder, her Chanel sunglasses remain firmly on her face despite being indoors, and her Louis Vuitton heels click against the marble floor with each step, announcing her arrival to everyone present. She's 19 years old, blonde hair perfectly styled, designer outfit that costs more than most people earn in a month, and a gold necklace with a pendant that reads, "Daddy's Princess," catching the fluorescent courtroom lights. In her right hand, her phone is glued to her palm, her manicured fingers scrolling through social media without even a glance at where she's walking. She's not just late. She's 20 minutes late. And she doesn't care. The reason this senator's daughter is here today is serious. She's facing charges of reckless driving, hit and run, failure to stop for police, and obstruction of justice. 3 nights ago, Madison was speeding through Providence at 80 miles per hour in a 45-mile-per-hour zone when she sideswiped a delivery van, kept driving, and only stopped when she reached the gates of her exclusive community 3 miles later. When the officer finally caught up to her, she didn't apologize. She didn't show concern. Instead, she asked him 7 times if he knew who her father was. Senator Richard Carter. The man who chairs the Senate Judiciary Committee. The man whose name she's used as a shield her entire privileged life. But what Madison doesn't know, what she hasn't bothered to research, is that Judge Frank Caprio doesn't care if your father runs the entire state government. In his courtroom, your last name means nothing. Your bank account means nothing. Your connections mean nothing. What matters is your behavior, your respect for the law, and your willingness to take responsibility for your actions. And Madison Carter is about to learn that lesson in the most devastating way possible. The punishment you're about to witness will become the most talked about sentence in political circles for years to come. This entitled young woman is about to discover that daddy's influence ends at the courtroom door, and no amount of money or power can save her from justice. As Madison finally reaches the defendant's table, she doesn't put her phone away. She's FaceTiming someone, her voice carrying across the quiet courtroom. "Yeah, hold on," she says into her phone, not bothering to lower her volume. "I'll call you back. This'll take like 5 minutes. She ends the call with a casual swipe and drops into her chair without acknowledging the judge, the bailiff, or anyone else in the room. She immediately starts texting, her thumbs flying across the screen, a piece of gum snapping between her teeth. Judge Caprio looks up from his bench with his characteristic patience and respect that he extends to every defendant, regardless of age, attitude, or background. "Good afternoon, Miss Carter," he says in his calm, measured tone. Madison doesn't look up. She holds up one finger in a wait gesture, continuing to type her message. After an agonizing 10 seconds of silence, she finally glances up with an expression of mild annoyance. "Yeah, what?" "Not good afternoon." "Not your honor." Just a dismissive "yeah, what," as if the judge had interrupted her during something important. Judge Caprio notices the blatant disrespect immediately, but he maintains his professional composure. His decades on the bench have taught him patience, though this level of casual contempt is testing even his legendary tolerance. "Miss Carter," he begins again, "you're charged with several serious offenses. Do you understand why you're here today?" Madison rolls her eyes, an exaggerated gesture that makes her look like a teenager being asked to clean her room. "Yeah, I know why I'm here. This whole thing is ridiculous. That van came out of nowhere, and I had an important event to get to. Besides, we already settled with the guy. Paid him way more than that junky van was worth." The bailiff calls the court to order, reading from the official docket. The State of Rhode Island versus Madison Elizabeth Carter. The charges are as follows. Count 1, reckless driving, traveling 80 miles per hour in a 45-mile-per-hour zone. Count 2, hit and run, leaving the scene of an accident with property damage. Count 3, failure to obey a lawful order, refusing to stop for law enforcement for approximately 3 miles. Count 4, obstruction of justice, attempting to intimidate an officer during the performance of his duties. Judge Caprio looks at Madison directly. "Miss Carter, how do you plead to these charges?" Madison sighs loudly, checking her reflection in her phone's camera before answering. "This is so extra. Not guilty. Obviously. Can we just settle this so I can leave? I have dinner reservations at 7. Before Judge Caprio can respond, Madison's attorney stands up. David Morrison is an expensive lawyer from Washington, D.C., the kind that charges $1,000 an hour and wears cufflinks that cost more than a used car. "Your Honor," he says smoothly, "my client is prepared to offer full restitution for the minor property damage sustained by the other vehicle. The van owner has already accepted our settlement offer of $15,000. We believe this matter can be resolved quickly and amicably with appropriate fines and restitution." Judge Caprio sets down his pen deliberately, the small sound somehow commanding attention in the quiet courtroom. "Mr. Morrison," he says, his voice still calm but with an edge of steel underneath, "this court doesn't operate on private settlements when criminal charges are involved. Your client is accused of fleeing the scene of an accident, refusing lawful orders, and attempting to obstruct justice. These are not civil matters to be resolved with checkbooks." Madison interrupts, leaning forward in her chair. "We already paid him. Like, way more than that janky van is worth. So this should be over, right?" She looks at the judge expectantly, as if waiting for him to agree with her obvious logic. Judge Caprio looks at Madison with an expression that veteran courtroom observers recognize as dangerous calm. "Miss Carter," he says slowly, "this isn't a negotiation. This is a court of law. We don't dismiss criminal charges because you wrote a check. The law applies to everyone equally, regardless of their financial resources or family connections." Madison barely seems to be listening. She's back on her phone now, scrolling through what appears to be Instagram, occasionally pausing to like a post or read a comment. "Right, whatever," she mutters without looking up. "Just tell me what box to check so we can wrap this up. I've got better things to do than sit here all afternoon." The courtroom falls into an uncomfortable silence. Even the court reporter pauses her typing, shocked by this display of casual contempt. Judge Caprio takes a measured breath, his decades of experience teaching him to remain composed even in the face of such blatant disrespect. "Miss Carter," he says, his voice firm now, "let's review the evidence so everyone in this courtroom understands exactly what happened 3 nights ago. Officer Rodriguez's dashcam and body camera footage has been submitted as evidence. We're going to watch it now." Madison lets out an exaggerated sigh, the kind a teenager makes when asked to do homework. "Do we really have to watch this?" she says, still not putting her phone down. "I already know what happened. I was there, remember? This is such a waste of time." Judge Caprio's patience is wearing thin, though his expression remains controlled. "Yes, Miss Carter, we do. Put your phone away and pay attention to these proceedings." Madison reluctantly slides her phone into her Prada handbag, making sure everyone sees how much of an imposition this is for her. She crosses her arms and slumps in her chair like a petulant child. The monitors throughout the courtroom flicker to life, and the dashcam footage begins to play. The timestamp shows 11:17 at night, 3 days ago. The camera captures Madison's white BMW weaving aggressively through traffic on Route 95, cutting between cars without signaling, accelerating dangerously. The speedometer display on the police cruiser shows her traveling at 78 miles per hour in a 45 mile per hour zone. Officer Rodriguez activates his lights and sirens, the blue and red flashes illuminating the night. But Madison doesn't slow down. She doesn't pull over. Instead, she changes lanes again, cutting off a truck, and actually accelerates. The radio crackles with Officer Rodriguez's voice. "Dispatch, I have a white BMW failing to yield. Suspect is not complying. Continuing pursuit on Route 95 northbound approaching Oakmont Hills exit." The footage continues for another 2.5 miles. Madison's car weaves through traffic, runs a red light at an intersection, and speeds through a residential area where the limit drops to 35. Then it happens. A delivery van, a white commercial vehicle with Vietnamese writing on the side, signals and begins to change lanes. It's a normal, legal lane change. But Madison, still speeding, tries to cut around the van on the right side. There's not enough room. Her BMW clips the rear bumper of the van with a sickening crunch of metal on metal. Sparks fly. The van swerves dangerously, the driver fighting to maintain control. For a terrifying moment, it looks like the van might flip or crash into the concrete barrier. But the driver manages to steady it, pulling onto the shoulder with hazard lights flashing. Madison doesn't even tap her brakes. The footage shows her BMW continuing at high speed, the damaged front fender visible in the police cruiser's headlights. Officer Rodriguez's radio crackles again. "Dispatch, suspect just struck another vehicle and is fleeing the scene. This is now a hit and run. Van driver appears okay but vehicle is damaged. Continuing pursuit." Finally, after another half mile, Madison's car turns into an exclusive gated community. The gates are already open, and she speeds through, finally coming to a stop in front of a massive colonial-style mansion. By the time Officer Rodriguez pulls up behind her, Madison is already out of her car, phone pressed to her ear, pacing on the brick driveway. The footage switches to Officer Rodriguez's body camera now. He approaches on foot, his voice professional and controlled. "Ma'am, I need you to end that call and show me your license and registration immediately." Madison holds up one hand in a wait gesture, her back to the officer, continuing her phone conversation. I'm on the phone, she says dismissively. You can wait. Officer Rodriguez steps closer, his tone becoming firmer. Ma'am, you just struck another vehicle and fled the scene. This is a serious matter. End the call now and provide your documentation. Madison finally turns around, and the body camera captures her face clearly for the first time. She's annoyed, irritated at the interruption, showing no concern whatsoever about what just happened. She ends the call with an exasperated huff. Fled. That's so dramatic. I barely touched that van. The guy was fine. She makes air quotes with her fingers when she says the word fled, mocking the officer's terminology. Now, do you know who my father is? Because I think you should know before you make this situation worse for yourself. Officer Rodriguez maintains his professional composure, though the body camera catches the slight tension in his voice. Ma'am, I don't care who your father is. I need your license and registration. You were traveling at excessive speed, you failed to yield to emergency lights and sirens, and you struck another vehicle and left the scene. These are serious criminal offenses. Madison's expression shifts from annoyance to something colder, more calculating. She takes a step closer to the officer, her voice dropping to a tone that's clearly meant to be threatening. My father is Senator Richard Carter, she says slowly, as if explaining something to a child. He chairs the Senate Judiciary Committee. That's the committee that oversees police funding, officer training programs, and departmental budgets. Are you understanding me now? Do you get what I'm telling you? Officer Rodriguez doesn't flinch. Ma'am, that's not relevant to this traffic stop. I need your license and registration. Please provide them now. Madison's friendly mask drops completely. Her voice becomes sharp, entitled, cruel. You're making a huge mistake right now. A career-ending mistake. My dad has your police chief on speed dial. They play golf together. They have lunch. One phone call from me, and you could be directing traffic in an elementary school parking lot by Monday morning. Is writing me a ticket really worth your entire career? The officer's response is calm and professional. Are you threatening me, ma'am? Because threatening a police officer is also a criminal offense. Madison laughs, a cold sound with no humor in it. I'm not threatening you. I'm educating you about how the real world works. Officers who use good judgment and show respect to the right people, they get promoted. They get better assignments. They have successful careers. Officers who don't, well, they find themselves in very uncomfortable positions. You seem like a smart guy. Use that intelligence. Walk away from this. Pretend it never happened. Everyone goes home happy. Officer Rodriguez reaches for his citation book. I'm going to need that license and registration now, ma'am. Or I'll have to place you under arrest for obstruction. Madison's face flushes red with anger. Fine, she snaps, storming to her BMW and retrieving the documents from her glove compartment. She shoves them at the officer with enough force to be aggressive. There. Happy now? Write your little ticket. Just know that before you finish your shift tonight, my father will already be making calls. We'll see how long you last in this department after you decided to harass a senator's daughter over nothing. Judge Caprio pauses the video. The courtroom is silent, the weight of what everyone just witnessed hanging heavy in the air. Madison sits at the defendant's table, her arms still crossed, looking completely unbothered by the footage. She examines her nails, appearing bored. Judge Caprio removes his glasses slowly, cleaning them with a cloth from his desk while the courtroom remains in stunned silence. He places the glasses back on and looks directly at Madison, his expression unreadable but his eyes sharp with decades of judicial wisdom. Miss Carter, he begins, his voice measured and calm, you've just watched yourself explicitly threaten a police officer's career for performing his lawful duties. You endangered lives by driving recklessly, you struck another person's vehicle, you fled the scene, and then you attempted to use your father's position to intimidate an officer of the law. Do you have anything to say about what we just witnessed? Madison shifts in her seat, uncrossing and recrossing her arms. She looks more annoyed than concerned, as if this entire proceeding is beneath her. Honestly? Yeah, I do. That footage is being taken completely out of context. Officer Rodriguez was being totally aggressive and unreasonable from the start. I was just trying to de-escalate the situation by helping him understand who he was dealing with. I wasn't threatening anyone. I was providing context. There's a difference. Judge Caprio sets down his glasses again, a gesture so deliberate it commands attention. Context. You were providing context by telling an officer he'd be directing traffic at elementary schools if he wrote you a ticket. Madison shrugs, the gesture careless and dismissive. I was explaining reality. That's how things work. Everyone knows it. Why are we pretending otherwise? Before Judge Caprio can respond, he picks up another document from his desk. Miss Carter, I also have phone records from that evening that were subpoenaed by the prosecution. At 7:43 p.m., exactly 2 minutes after Officer Rodriguez issued your citation, you placed a call to your father's chief of staff. That call lasted 6 minutes. Then you sent several text messages. Would you like me to read them aloud? Madison's confident expression falters slightly, but she recovers quickly. Those are private communications. They shouldn't even be allowed here. Judge Caprio's voice remains steady. They were legally obtained through subpoena, Miss Carter. They're part of the evidence in this case. The clerk will read the relevant messages into the record. The court clerk, a middle-aged woman with reading glasses, stands and begins reading from a printed transcript. Text message sent at 7:39 p.m. to contact listed as Melissa, quote, got pulled over by some power-tripping cop. So annoying. Dad will handle it. End quote. Emoji included, eye roll emoji. Text message sent at 7:45 p.m. to contact listed as Stevens, Chief of Staff, quote, need the usual cleanup. Some officer giving me problems. Rodriguez. Badge number on the citation. Can you make this disappear? End quote. Response from Stevens at 7:51 p.m., quote, already making calls. Don't worry. This will go away. End quote. Madison's reply at 7:52 p.m., quote, thanks. This is exactly why we pay you the big bucks. End quote. Laughing emoji included. The courtroom erupts in quiet murmurs. People shift in their seats, exchange glances, shake their heads. Madison's lawyer, David Morrison, looks uncomfortable, loosening his tie slightly. Madison herself has gone pale, but she tries to maintain her composure, her jaw set defiantly. Judge Caprio allows the murmurs to continue for a moment before raising his hand for silence. So, Miss Carter, he says, within minutes of receiving a citation, you were already working to make it disappear through your father's office. Is that correct? Madison's voice has an edge to it now, defensive. I was upset. I reached out to people I trust. That's not a crime. Making a phone call isn't illegal. Judge Caprio continues, undeterred. We also have testimony from the van owner, Mr. Nguyen Chen, who you struck that night. Mr. Chen is joining us by phone. The courtroom speaker crackles to life, and a man's voice fills the room, accented but clear, the voice of someone who learned English as a second language but speaks it with careful precision. Thank you, Your Honor. My name is Nguyen Chen. I come to America 22 years ago from Vietnam with nothing. I work hard, save money, by delivery van. I drive that van 12 hours every day, 6 days a week. I deliver for restaurants, for grocery stores, for anyone who needs. That van is how I feed my family, how I pay rent, how I send money to my mother in Vietnam. Mr. Chen continues, his voice steady but emotional. 3 nights ago, I am driving home after long day. Very tired. I signal to change lanes. I look in mirror. I see car far behind, so I move. Then boom, that car hits me hard. Very hard. My van almost flip over. I almost crash into wall. I am shaking, very scared. I pull over, turn on hazard lights. I think the driver will stop, will check if I am okay, will exchange information like law says. But no. That car just keeps going. Disappears into night. I sit there shaking, thinking what if I had died? What if I crashed and hurt someone else? And the driver just leaves like I am nothing, like my life means nothing. The courtroom is absolutely silent now, hanging on every word. Judge Caprio speaks gently. Mr. Chen, what happened after that? Mr. Chen's voice continues. I call police. They come, take report, tell me they will try to find the driver. 2 days later, people in suits come to my apartment. They have paper, very official. They say they represent the person who hit me. They offer me money. $15,000. They say take the money, sign the paper, forget it happened. I ask, will the driver apologize? Will she take responsibility? They say no, just take money and be quiet. They say if I don't take money, I get nothing. They try to scare me, say I have no proof, say court costs too much money for someone like me. I tell them no, Mr. Chen says, his voice growing stronger. I don't want money to be quiet. I want justice. I want driver to understand she could have killed me. She could have killed herself. She needs to learn that life is precious, that people matter, that you cannot just hit someone and drive away like they are garbage on the street. Money cannot fix everything. Some things are about right and wrong, not about dollars. Madison mutters something under her breath, barely audible but clearly dismissive. Judge Caprio catches it immediately. "Excuse me, Miss Carter. What did you say? Speak up so the court can hear you." Madison looks up, defiance flashing in her eyes. Her voice is louder now, dripping with entitled contempt. "I said he's just trying to get more money. That's what this is really about. We offered him triple what that piece of junk van is worth, and he's playing the victim card to squeeze more out of us. His van probably cost $5,000 used. We gave him 15. He should be grateful. He should be thanking us for being so generous. Instead, he's wasting everyone's time with this performance about how scared he was. Please. He's a delivery driver. Getting bumped comes with the job." The courtroom explodes. Not in loud outbursts, but in sharp intakes of breath, in people leaning forward in their seats, in the bailiff's hand moving instinctively toward his position. Even David Morrison, Madison's expensive lawyer, drops his head into his hands. Judge Caprio's expression doesn't change, but something in his eyes hardens. Something shifts. This is the moment. The breaking point. The instant when patience transforms into judgment. "Miss Carter," Judge Caprio says, each word precisely enunciated, "do you understand that Mr. Chin is a human being whose life you endangered?" Madison rolls her eyes again, that same dismissive gesture that served her so well throughout her privileged life. "Your Honor, with all due respect, you're being incredibly dramatic about this. I barely tapped his van. Nobody died. Nobody even got hurt. And we compensated him generously. This whole thing is being blown completely out of proportion because of who my father is. If I was just some random person, we wouldn't even be here right now. You'd have accepted the settlement and moved on. But because I'm Senator Carter's daughter, suddenly this is some huge federal case." Judge Caprio picks up another file from his bench. "Speaking of proportions, Miss Carter, I see here that you had a remarkably similar incident 8 months ago on your college campus." Madison's confident expression flickers. "That was completely different. That was nothing. Campus security was just being ridiculous." Judge Caprio reads from the report. "You parked your vehicle in a clearly marked handicapped parking space outside your sorority house. When campus security officer Janet Williams asked you to move, you refused. When Officer Williams explained that the space was reserved for people with disabilities, you stated, and I quote, 'My dad funds half the buildings on this campus. I'll park wherever I want.' Is that accurate?" Madison's face flushes. "That's taken completely out of context. I was late for a philanthropy event, a charity thing where we were raising money for sick kids. The parking lot was full. I was only going to be there for like 20 minutes. And yeah, my family does donate a lot to that university, so I think I've earned a little flexibility." Judge Caprio closes the file and sets it down with deliberate slowness. He removes his glasses again, folding them carefully and placing them on the bench in front of him. Then he does something unusual, something that makes everyone in the courtroom sit up straighter and pay attention. He stands up. In his decades on the bench, Judge Frank Caprio rarely stands during proceedings. But when he does, it means something significant is about to happen. The room falls into absolute silence. Even Madison, despite her attitude, seems to sense that something has shifted. She stops fidgeting with her designer handbag. Her hand moves toward her phone pocket but stops halfway. "Miss Carter," Judge Caprio begins, his voice quiet but carrying the weight of absolute authority, "in the last 30 minutes, you have demonstrated everything that is fundamentally wrong with privilege in America. You have shown this court, and everyone watching, that you believe your last name makes you special. It doesn't. You have suggested that your father's political position should grant you immunity from the law. It won't. Not here. Not today. Not ever in my courtroom. You have endangered lives, fled from responsibility, threatened a police officer, attempted to silence your victim with money, and then had the audacity to mock that victim in open court. And through all of this, you have shown not one single moment of genuine remorse or understanding of the harm you've caused." Madison opens her mouth to interrupt, her hand raising. But Judge Caprio continues, his voice cutting through her attempt like a blade. "I'm not finished, Miss Carter. You will sit down and you will listen, perhaps for the first time in your privileged life, to someone telling you no. Someone telling you that your behavior has consequences. Someone telling you that the world does not revolve around your convenience, your schedule, your dinner reservations, or your father's political connections. Sit down. Now." Madison sits, her eyes wide with shock. In 19 years of life, very few people have ever spoken to her this way. Her father's staffers defer to her. Her college professors give her extensions and special considerations. Her friends enable her behavior. But not Judge Caprio. Not today. The judge continues, his voice growing more passionate but never losing its control. You struck Mr. Chen's vehicle. A vehicle he uses to support his family. A vehicle he saved for years to purchase. A vehicle that represents his livelihood, his ability to provide food and shelter for the people he loves. He drives that van 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, doing honest work that makes our community function. When you hit him, you didn't just damage metal and glass. You endangered his life. You threatened his ability to work. You showed him that in your world, people like him don't matter. They're just obstacles in your way. Inconveniences between you and wherever you believe you need to be. Then you fled. You didn't stop to see if he was injured. You didn't call for help. You didn't take responsibility. You just drove away, because in your mind, his well-being was less important than avoiding the consequences of your recklessness. And when Officer Rodriguez, a man who puts on a uniform every day to serve and protect this community, when he tried to do his job, you threatened him. You told him his career would be destroyed if he didn't let you go. You weaponized your father's name and position to intimidate a public servant who was simply trying to enforce the law equally for all citizens. Judge Caprio pauses, letting his words sink in. Madison's face has gone from defiant to pale. Her lawyer sits motionless, knowing better than to interrupt what's happening. And now, the judge continues, you stand in my court and declare yourself above the law because you've been to the White House twice. Because your family has money. Because your father holds political office. You look at Mr. Chen, a hardworking immigrant who came to this country with nothing and built an honest life through dedication and sacrifice, and you call him a victim playing cards. You dismiss his very real trauma and fear as a performance. You suggest that nearly killing him is just part of his job, something he should accept as the cost of being a delivery driver. The judge's voice drops lower, more intense. Miss Carter, let me be absolutely clear with you. Your attitude is not just offensive. It's dangerous. It's corrosive to everything our justice system stands for. It represents the worst kind of entitlement, the belief that some people matter more than others based on wealth and connections rather than character and conduct. You believe money can solve everything. That checks can erase responsibility. That your last name is a shield against consequences. Today, in this courtroom, you're going to learn that you're wrong. Madison's voice cracks when she finally speaks, some of her armor beginning to crack. Your Honor, I just think that given the circumstances, and my father's position in the community, maybe we could work out something reasonable. Judge Caprio's eyes flash. Reasonable? You want reasonable? Let me tell you what's reasonable, Miss Carter. What's reasonable is holding people accountable for their actions regardless of who their parents are. What's reasonable is teaching young people that privilege comes with responsibility, not immunity. What's reasonable is showing Mr. Chen and Officer Rodriguez and every person in this courtroom that justice applies equally to everyone. Now the judge's voice becomes firm, authoritative, final. For the offense of hit and run, leaving the scene of an accident, I am imposing a fine of $10,000. Madison reaches reflexively toward her handbag. Fine, whatever, she mutters. But Judge Caprio isn't finished. That fine is to be paid by you personally, Miss Carter. Not by your father. Not from a trust fund. Not from any family account. You will provide this court with proof of employment and payment records showing that you earned this money yourself through your own labor. Madison's hand freezes. What? I don't have a job. I'm a full-time student. Then I suggest you find employment, the judge responds. You have 6 months to pay the fine in full.